You were not meant to be a slave to the grind. You were not meant to trade your life force for money. You can escape gravity. You can unlock your life. You got this. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Unlock Your Life. I'm your host, Jennings Smith. Guys, today we're going to get into a bit of an alternative investment that I'm in. Still real estate, so don't freak out. But it's something that I really don't talk a whole lot about publicly, but it is something I'm doing. And so I wanted to kind of give you an idea about that and how it works. So if you follow me, you know I'm all about multifamily and commercial assets versus single family homes. The reason being is it's really, really difficult to scale single family homes. You're going to have 100 mortgages, 100 tax bills, 100 air conditioners, properties probably spread out all over the place, and you got ongoing repairs and maintenance, et cetera. And having owned single family homes, there's typically not a whole lot of cash flow that goes along with them, because even if you're making a couple $100 a month, you got an air conditioner that goes out, there goes $5,000. You got a roof that needs to be replaced, there's $10,000. You know, you've got a tenant that moves, it costs a couple grand to get them out, then you've got to clean the place up again, fix it up again, and then, you know, you got to place a new tenant. There's a few $1,000s lost. Toilets, you know, leaky faucets, water heater repairs, et cetera, et cetera. It just really adds up, and it's difficult to make them into a durable cash flowing asset. So you may be surprised to know that I actually own quite a few single family homes. I'm looking at my spreadsheet here, and I've got 7 of them right now, currently. 7 single family homes that I still own. And these are not the ones that I started out with as rentals, right? Because the thing I'm doing with these is I'm approaching them in a very different manner. I own 7 single family homes, but they're not rental properties to me. So how does that work? What am I doing? And how do I make money with it? Really, really good money with it. I'm going to talk about the pros. I'm going to talk about the cons, the stuff that people don't tell you when they talked about this model, and the things that suck about it, but the things that are actually really, really nice about it. Okay, so here is the model in a nutshell. This concept is called basically a slow flip. If you think about flipping houses, most of the time you want to flip a house as fast as you can. You go out there and you buy a house for $200,000, you put 50 into it, and you hope to make, 50 grand because you can sell it for 300,000, right? And you want to do that in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Whereas a slow flip is buying a home and then reselling it slowly, right? It's reselling that thing over a 10, 15, 20, or even 30-year mortgage and collecting payments along the way so that you can sell it at a much, much higher price. How can you get a much, much higher price? Well, because you're working in a different economy than the cash economy. So let's say you bought a house in the Midwest, a junky little house for 30 grand. Now you may be thinking, Jennings, you can't buy a house for 30 grand. Yes, you can. There's actually quite a few houses for sale in that price range when you look in Indiana, Illinois, St. Louis, Missouri. I've got one in Iowa. They're not in the best necessarily like growing huge markets, but there are. Ohio also has houses in that price range where you can buy things in that $30,000 to $40,000 price range that are actually decent, right? They're livable. They maybe even already have a tenant in place, right? But the problem with those is you don't get a whole lot of appreciation. In those markets, you're not going to get a lot of appreciation. So yes, maybe you can buy something for $30,000 and you can rent it out for $700 or $800 a month, and you think, oh wow, the 2% rule, I'm making money. Well, really, when you factor in the maintenance, repairs, vacancy, and turns, all that stuff, you're not making a whole lot of money. And so you need to be making money on appreciation, right? Single family rentals can make sense if you're in an appreciating market, where I had 2 rentals here in my town of Somerville, and over the course of 5 years, both of them went up in value by $100,000. And I'll tell you, I didn't make much cash flow along the way over those 5 years, but I made the cash flow when I sold those. I made the cash when I sold those. I netted 200 grand by selling those 2 rentals, and it was a good deal for me. But if I'm not in an appreciating market and I'm just relying on this cash flow every month, that's going to be my profit, because in 5 years, if I bought it for 30, maybe it's only worth 40 at that point, or 50 best case scenario. So what am I doing that for? So in this model, we're buying something for cash, right? Let's just say $30,000. If we turned around and relisted it for sale in a straight up transaction, what would we be able to sell it for? Well, probably about $30,000. If we didn't renovate it or fix it up or we're in a hot market, it's probably still worth about $30,000 to the next cash buyer. But what if you sold that owner financed, right? You're moving into a totally different economy where you're offering, hey, you put down $3,000, $5,000, you pay $600 or $700 a month. I'm going to give you a mortgage. You're going to be able to pay this off. Your payment's never going to go up because it's fixed. It's a mortgage. It's not like rent. That starts to become attractive to people. And so you can sell that house for quite a bit more. In most cases, at least double. And I'm going to use some case studies, like real life examples of what I've done and what I've paid for them and what I've sold them for. And so you can do that because to the person's mind, right? The tenant, the end buyer, right? If they're putting down $3,000, well, it's probably going to cost them $1,500 to $2,000 in deposits and first month's rent, et cetera, to move into an apartment, right? If your monthly payment, all in taxes, insurance, mortgage, everything is like $700, $800, they're probably going to be paying that in rent anyways. And so, yes, they recognize, all right, he's selling me a $30,000 house for $60,000. That's a little steep, but I can actually own real estate. This guy is going to approve me as long as I have the down payment and I have a job and I have a source of income. I'm going to qualify for this loan. I'm not going to have to go through all the bank rigmarole of them, checking back 20 years on all I've done, or maybe, I'm here on a green card or something like that. And it's going to be very difficult for me to qualify for traditional bank financing. And my only option is to rent for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I don't want to do that because every time I turn around, my landlord is raising the rents on me. When things break, he doesn't fix it. And I don't like renting. I want to own a piece of real estate for myself. And this is another reason I like this model, is because you are truly helping somebody do something, right? Because rent is 100% interest. Now, there's a time and a place to rent. There's always going to be people that need to rent. But if you can afford to buy and enjoy home ownership, at the end of the day, when that house is paid off, it could be worth quite a bit more than what you're into it for. We're talking 20, 30 years down the road. I mean, even if the house is worth $100,000. And beyond that, just to know that your payment is going to stay the same for 30 years is extremely attractive. They can also pay it off early. They can chip a couple $100 a month into that and pay that thing off in 10 years instead of 30. I mean, the amortization schedules are crazy how fast they work if they put extra principal towards these notes. So let me give you some breakdowns, okay? Got one in Iowa, and I bought it for $27,000. I sold it for $60,000. The loan amount was $57,000. So he put down $3,000 and his monthly payment is $750. So $75 goes to insurance, $75 goes to taxes. I escrow that for him. The other $600 is his, mortgage payment. Right? So the beauty of that is I can actually count on that $600. Because when he pays me the $600, $750, yes, I got to set aside the taxes and insurance, but beyond that, I don't have to set aside anything because he owns the home. Like if his water heater breaks, that's on him. If his roof leaks, that's on him. If he's got a problem with his refrigerator not working anymore, he needs to go out and buy a refrigerator. And you think about it, if you're a homeowner sitting here, if you've got a window that's leaking, are you calling your bank? Are you calling, Chase and saying, hey, my window's leaking, I need you to fix this? They're going to say, well, it's your house, dude. We just funded your loan. That's on you to maintain and take care of your house. And so when you disclose this to the people and they understand, look, this is a home ownership deal. This is all maintenance repairs is on you. You're accepting the house as is. They get it. They're buying into that system. And you don't have to be worried that you're going to get hit with a $5,000 bill because their air conditioner went out, right? That is their responsibility to maintain and keep up the house. So you can actually count on that monthly cash flow to supplement your lifestyle or your living expenses or savings or whatever. So that's one thing I really like about that, because with single family rentals, if you're making a couple $100 in free cash flow, you better be saving for a rainy day, because if that tenant doesn't pay, you're still going to have to pay your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, your maintenance, et cetera, right? This is something that in this case, I bought with my own cash. I'm going to tell you about how you can do this if you don't have the cash as well. Okay. Another case study, Anderson, Indiana, purchased for $30,000. Sold it for $70,000. The tenant put down $10,000 and told me, I want to pay this thing off in 3 years. I said, well, in 3 years, I mean, your payment's going to be $1,700 a month. Can you swing that? He said, yes, I can, but I want 0% interest. So I'm like, okay, usually I charge about, 11.5 to 12% interest, depending on the deal. He wanted 0% interest. However, I bought it for 30. He put down 10K, non-refundable. I sold it for 70. So there's a $40,000 spread, and I can collect all 40,000 of that within 3 years. So I took that deal, and he's one of my best tenants. He's always paying on time. Right on the third, he pays every month. And at this point, but between the 10,000 he put down and the 1,700 a month he's paid, I really have almost got that house, all my cash back out of it. Another one in Decatur, Illinois, bought it for $30,000, sold it for $60,000, $3,000 down. All-in payment is $735. So $585 is the mortgage and $75 and $75 for the tax and insurance. And so when I add these up, it's generating a good little chunk of cash flow every month to me that I can actually depend on and count on. Now let me tell you a case study of one in Indiana that I bought. Okay, bought this thing for $28,000, sold it for $65,000. This person put down $5,000, $60,000 mortgage, paid for 4 or 5 months, then they fell behind, then they defaulted, right? Okay, now what do you do? And if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, yeah, well, what about when people don't pay? Well, here's what happens when the people don't pay. So if he put down $5,000 and he's made, let's just call it 4 payments of $600, there's another $2,400, right? He calls me up, he can't do it, whatever, he leaves. Yes, I've got to get somebody over there to change the locks, trash out the house. He left a mess, of course, but he left of his own volition. I didn't have to evict. And the way I structure the contracts is, well, I'll get into that in a minute, but he leaves and we relist the house. Ended up selling it again for $69,900. And the person put down $3,000 down payment and they're paying now, $750 a month. Okay. So they've paid a few months now. And at this point, my basis is what? I'm 5,000 plus 2,500 plus another 2,500. There's 10,000 plus a few months of payments is another $1,200. I mean, I'm into this house for $18,000, $19,000 and I just sold it for $69,900. Now it'll take me 30 years to collect that. And so that's a long time, but at 12% interest, you're not only getting 12% interest on your money, you're getting 12% interest on double your money because you're selling it for twice what you have into it. And if somebody defaults, well, you can collect another down payment and you can start the cycle all over again. This has happened to me in St. Louis. I've sold this house twice now, and I've got it trashed out again, and I'm selling it for the 3rd time. But between the 2 tenants already that have paid a few monthly payments and they paid the down payment, I mean, my basis in that house is now $17,000, right? And I can resell it again for $60,000, maybe more, 65. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But this is where I'm telling you that even if somebody defaults, it's not the end of the world. So how does it work? Let me break down, how do I find these deals? How do I market them? How do I get a tenant placed? All that stuff. So first, you want to identify a market. You want to identify a market where you can buy something and your all-in payment is going to be equal or less than rent. That's very important. Your tenant base or your end buyer is very sensitive to what their monthly payment's going to be. They also typically don't have a lot of cash. I mean, $5,000 is stretching it. $3,000 is doable. I wouldn't take less than $2,500 down. But it's, for somebody to put down $10,000 like this one guy did, that's few and far between. So you've got to keep that down payment reasonable and you got to keep that monthly payment reasonable. But if you can buy a house and you can sell it for double and that payment is still less than the rent in that market, you're going to be able to move that inventory. So I look at, tertiary markets like, Clarence, Iowa, Anderson, Indiana, St. Louis, Missouri, Marion, Indiana, Decatur, Illinois. I mean, these are not like hubs that everybody is moving to and wants to live, but market rents there are $800-900. And so if I'm at $750 or $695, that's pretty attractive to somebody to move in there. So identifying these Some of them I find on Zillow and I just make offers. Some of them I have contacts in those cities, landlords, etc., that are coming by deals and I'm working my network. Some of them come through networking groups. I'm in a mastermind that I paid to be in, was really pretty cheap. I think it was like $500. I get some leads from that. I have some buddies that are in another group that does the same thing. I've gotten some leads off of that. And so these come through on market and also just connections in a market that you want to be in. And knowing someone in the local market is important. So let's say you find a deal and you want to make an offer and you want to put it under contract. Well, you need to look at the house. I live in South Carolina. I am not flying to Anderson, Indiana to do a $30,000 deal. I'm just not, it's not worth my time and effort. And I don't want to spend time away from my family. So what I'm going to do there is I got to find a local person that's boots on the ground. This could be a realtor. This could be a property manager. This could be a maintenance guy. This could be, somebody you look on Facebook, like, who do I know that lives in this area, right? But you got to find somebody that's going to go there, take pictures of the house, take a video, and do like a FaceTime walkthrough for the house so you can see the major issues. You don't want to buy something with a heavy rehab. Like, I'm looking for, does it have a good roof on it? Does the heat work? Does the water work? Does the power work? Does the air conditioning work if it has air conditioning? And if those things are there and the foundation is good, that's a deal that I'm going to go forward with. I'm not looking at like every little nick and scratch in the wall and et cetera, et cetera. These houses don't have to be perfect, right? They're sold as fixer-uppers and they're a good opportunity for the person buying them, but they do need to be livable. When you try to sell a house that is not livable, it's very difficult for your prospective buyer to not have a place to live, and they're dumping money into this house and they can't, they just can't make it work, right? They're living in an apartment, they're trying to fix up the house, they've got 2 payments, it just doesn't work for them. You also want to get somebody that's got some handyman construction experience, because typically these houses, they need some fixing up. And so you get somebody that has no experience in any of this stuff, can't even fix a leaky faucet or something, that's probably not your best buyer. But you get somebody to walk through the house. If it looks good, you put it under contract. And in this instance, I am just paying for the house cash. I have the 30 grand, so I'm going to pay for the house. If I didn't have the cash, something you can do is you can partner with somebody. Like, let's say you partner with somebody and said, look, for the first 5 years, all the cash flow is going to go to you to pay you back your 30,000. After that, I'm going to get 75% of the cash flow. You're going to get 25% or 50-50 or however you want to split that up. You could also borrow the money from an investor at 8, 9, 10%. And if you're only borrowing 30 and you're selling it for 60, that monthly payment will be about the same. So for the first 5 years, the money's going back to the investor that put up the cash. He's on a 5-year amortized loan. So for the first 5 years, you don't make anything, but for the next 25 years, you own that house free and clear, and all the cash and capital is coming to you. And if you got to take it back and resell it, it's all good because you're starting that process over again. The drawback to that is if you have a lender that gave you the 30 grand, if you've got a defaulting tenant, well, you still got to make that payment. Now, it's not a big payment, but you still have to have that extra $600 or $700 a month that's going towards your lender. Okay, so it's elevating your risk. If you can do it with your own cash, that's best. But if you can't, that's not a reason to not try and go forward with this. So you get under contract. Let's say you close the house. Okay, you buy the house. Next thing you're going to want to do is, you've already got pictures, right? Because the realtor or property manager went by there. You want to post that ad on Facebook. I've used just Facebook, where I've got, pictures up there with owner finance, $3,000 down, $750 a month all-in payment. And I have a description of the house, and you can boost that post for like $5, $10, whatever. And you get inbound messages. You have a lockbox on the house so they can do a self-showing is how I typically do it. And when I have somebody that's very interested, then I have them meet with that local realtor, that my boots on the ground person. And yeah, you got to pay them a couple $100 to do this, but it's not a big deal. So they meet with them, and if they like it, well, then you send them the contract, and the contract is very important. Okay, so the main pieces of the contract are this. One, you have a disclosure sheet saying every way to Sunday that they understand they are buying the house, right? That they are responsible for the repairs and the maintenance, that they are responsible for the mortgage, that the taxes and insurance are going to be taken in by you and paid, but they're on the hook for that. And if those taxes and insurance go up, then their payment's going to go up. That's the only way the payment can go up, is if the taxes and insurance go up. Secondly, the agreement is written such as you are remaining on title. You are not transferring the title over to them. you are essentially, they are on a land contract. So they can pay the payments, and as soon as they pay the last payment, now you've got to quit claim the deed over to them and it's their house. But if they don't pay the payments, you can evict them as if they were a tenant, and it takes, 30 days or less. And in my experience, every single time when someone's defaulted, they just leave. They know that they didn't do their part of the deal and they leave. Now, worst case scenario, if they don't leave, you go to the courthouse and you file an eviction, you hire a lawyer, and then you get them out. But you don't have to go through a year-long foreclosure process because they are not on that deed. There are some states that are not super friendly towards land contracts. In that, you can do a rent-to-own type of agreement where it's a rent credit is credited towards their mortgage or the purchase price. And after a couple of years, like let's say 3 to 5 years, if they haven't defaulted, then you can transfer it over to a land contract because they're not going to default on the deal at that point. Because if they're going to default, they're probably going to default within the first 12 months. If they make it through the first 12 months, they're probably pretty steady. They can figure it out and they're going to make that payment. But the contract is very, very important. I got my contracts from Slow Flip Formula. If you Google Slow Flip Formula, that's where I got mine. It was like $500, and I got his little video course on how to do all this stuff and the contracts. Shout out to Antonio, buddy. So you get them there, they sign the contract, they pay the deposit. Now you set them up in a portal. I use apartments.com. It's a free portal. You just put the address in, you upload the agreement that you signed with them. They can sync their bank account. They can pay with credit card. You can automatically add late fees, all that stuff. And they pay apartments.com. Apartments.com just ACHs it right to you every month as people pay. And then, you just let it ride. And I've had deals. I've done this probably 14 times. I think I have, 8 currently, but I've done this 14 times. I've had people pay these things off. I had one guy walked to, he was a local house, and he came to my house and he cut me a check for $20,000 and paid off the balance of his mortgage. We've got people that pay extra. We've got people that pay the full term and pay it off. But the cool thing about it is when these people are paying, I've got some tenants, I haven't talked to them in 5 years, 6 years. They're just paying their mortgage. And you think about the relationship you have with your bank. Are you buddy with whoever holds your mortgage? No, you just send them the check every month. And it's a lot more passive than being a landlord. Now, it is active to find the deal, to get it listed, get it sold, and get somebody in there. Once someone's in there, it's pretty smooth sailing until they don't pay. Then you got to get them out and redo the process all over. But remember, you're reselling it at full price and you're collecting another deposit on top of that to offset your efforts and your work in there. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's how it works. This is something that I've used to just like when I have some extra cash stacked around, I say, you know what? Let me turn this into an annuity, right? Let me turn this into something that's going to pay me $600 a month. Would I put down $30,000 to get $600 a month for the next 30 years? Sure. It sounds like a pretty good equation to me. But the drawbacks of it are everything sounds easier than it is, right? This is something that I thought, oh man, I'd like to scale this up to, 50, 100 of these. But you are going to have defaults. You're dealing with a low credit type demographic here. And, I've got 8 of these, and in the last year, I've had 3 defaults, right? So, that's like a 25, 30% default rate. So pretty big default rate. If I had 100 of these, I'd be processing defaults probably every month. I'd be dealing with this stuff. And so I don't want you to think that it's totally set it, forget it. There's no work involved, because it is work to find them and get them sold. When somebody stops paying you, you got to go trash out the house, clean it out, cut the grass, and relist it. And hopefully they haven't totally destroyed the house. So if they do, you've got that to deal with. You've got to keep up with the taxes. You got to keep up with the insurance. Insurance policies are pretty cheap. I typically just put a, actual cash value in place for the mortgage, like $30,000. So if they burn the house down, I'm not going to make any money, but at least I'm going to get my $30,000 back. I just want to protect my risk there. Once I've recouped all of the cash, I may not insure the house, but at this point I'm insuring all the houses that I have. And so that's a little bit of, admin work on that side. But those are the major drawbacks. Another one is in a rental home, yes, you're dealing with a lot of rigmarole of keeping these homes maintained, maybe not much cash flow, you're fixing stuff. But at the end of the day, 10 years, 20 years down the road, you're able to sell that house and get the cash. Whereas with these homes, it's kind of like at the end of the day, if they really do pay it off over 30 years, well, there's nothing left there, right? You've eaten all of your money in the monthly payments that they paid you over the 30 years. But I mean, returns, like a $30,000 or $60,000 mortgage paid out at 12% over 30 years is something like 240 grand. So you're turning 30 grand into 240 grand over the course of 30 years. It's not the best return in the world, but it's not bad. And what happens often is a lot of the times, you take these houses back 4, 5, 7 years down the road. A lot of times they don't pay them off. They don't pay them early. And so, you may work this process for a while. And then, when someone moves out, you say, you know what, let me just list it and sell it for 45 grand, get my cash back out, make a little bit of money. So in a nutshell, I just wanted to talk about this with you guys, just sort of bring it up as something that I'm doing on the side. It's not a main business of mine, but it's just something that I do when opportunity hits me. And if you are trying to get traction and get something going in real estate, like this is a good starter, like dip your toe in the water type of deal. I don't talk about it a whole lot because it's really not multifamily focused, but it is an option for if you've got 30,000 laying around and you want to take your first stab at real estate. You're not ready to go out there and buy an apartment yet. You want to get some cash flow built up. This is something that could be a decent option for you. Because 30 grand at $7,200 a year, that's a 20-something% return. Now, it's not a truly 20% return because you got to remember you're eating into your principal. They're paying the principal back. But a lot of the times they don't go the full cycle and you end up getting the house back anyways. So there we have it, guys. That's what I got for you this week. If you enjoyed this episode, shoot me a DM. I'm happy to chat about it and walk you through some of the stuff that I learned and who I learned it from. I can connect you with Antonio with Slowfoot Formula if you want to talk to him. But appreciate you guys. Take some time this week to unlock your life. Thanks.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.